Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're bringing you our top 10 of players and managers who were once enemies but then settled their differences. 10. David Beckham and Alex Ferguson. We begin with one of modern football's most famous falling outs. David Beckham was the poster boy for English football in the early 2000s, and his manager Sir Alex Ferguson became increasingly uncomfortable with his celebrity image. And in 2003, the England captain left Old Trafford under a cloud after he, according to Ferguson, thought he was bigger than the manager. That season, Beckham was left scarred by a boot kicked by Ferguson in the dressing room following an FA Cup defeat to Arsenal, in an incident which sent their working relationship beyond repair. But alas, 4 years later, the pair made amends, as Beckham appeared at a charity match to commemorate Man United's 50th year in European competition. In an address to the fans, he claimed his stay at the club was the best time of his whole career, and tributed his former boss, saying, "You have the best manager in the world." Later, in his autobiography, Ferguson lauded Beckham as a wonderful boy. Isn't that nice? 9. Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira. Now for a rivalry which defined the Premier League for many years. Back when Arsenal and Man United were the only serious teams in England, Vieira and Keane's battles were key to deciding who would take the English title. During their outstanding Prem careers, the pair were shown 21 red cards between them, and didn't save any niceties for when they came up against each other. Keane later admitted that he was driven by pure hatred when he faced Arsenal, and things famously boiled over in 2005, when the two captains came to loggerheads in the Highbury Tunnel. But since their retirements, Keane and Vieira have enjoyed more affable relations, and even came together to shoot a one-off TV show called Best of Enemies, Who Knew?, where they analysed their fiery encounters. They still maintain a healthy rivalry though, with Keane still claiming that Vieira wasn't quite as tough as him. 8. Paulinho Santos and João Vieira Pinto. Unless you followed Benfica and Porto in the 90s, it's highly unlikely you know about Paulinho Santos and João Vieira Pinto's rivalry. As the two sides fought for titles in this time, with Porto almost exclusively coming out on top, Santos and Pinto's violent clashes were a regular occurrence. Benfica's star man Pinto drew first blood in 1994, breaking Santos' nose and knocking out two of his teeth, and from then on their hate-filled aggression towards each other became as much of a spectacle as the matches going on around them. Portugal's manager at the time, Antonio Oliveira, tried to make peace between the two by forcing them to share a room while on international duty. As you can imagine, that didn't quite work out as he would have hoped, but the pair would later express their admiration for each other as players, and following their final league matchup in 2003, symbolically swapped shirts on the pitch. 7. Jose Mourinho and Juan Mata. Okay, so Mourinho and Mata were never exactly sworn enemies, but the Portuguese coach certainly undermined the Spaniard while he was at Chelsea. When the Special One returned to the Stamford Bridge dugout in 2013, Mata had just picked up his second successive Player of the Year award from the club, and had also been included in the PFA Team of the Year, having become the club's chief creator. But Mourinho was convinced Oscar was a better number 10, and limited Mata to just 11 league starts while playing him out of position. Mata was sold to Man United that January, and when Mourinho made his way to Old Trafford 2.5 years later, many expected the Spaniard to be first for the chop. And it looked to be that way too, as the creative midfielder was taken off in the new manager's first competitive game, having been subbed on just half an hour earlier, and he even had to be consoled by the coaching staff as he took his place back on the bench. But these fears were short-lived. Mata enjoyed his first season under Mourinho in Manchester and doesn't look to be going anywhere soon. 6. Pep Guardiola and Yaya Toure. Like Mourinho and Mata, Guardiola and Toure were reunited in Manchester in 2016, and it looked like the Ivorian would be shown the door pretty quickly, having been sold to City by the Catalan in 2010. An incident for which player and manager offered differing accounts. Toure claimed Guardiola had not spoken to him at all in the season leading up to his departure, while Pep insisted he had actually tried to convince Yaya to stay at the Camp Nou. Either way, their rift intensified after Toure was dropped from City's Champions League squad, at which point the midfielder's agent Dimitri Seluk got involved, blasting Guardiola for humiliating his client and demanding an apology from the manager if he failed to win the coveted trophy. Pep then banned Toure from the team altogether until an apology was sent his way, leading to a saga which featured Seluk hitting back at the manager in an embarrassing phone-in interview live on Sky Sports. But Toure eventually apologised on his agent's behalf, and then became an integral part of Guardiola's domestic and European escapades at the Etihad. 5. Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. Like Vieira and Keane, Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher's rivalry was a fixture of the Northwest Derby for many years. And although Liverpool and Man United only rarely competed each other for titles in the Premier League era, meetings between the two were always bad-tempered affairs. Neville cemented his place as the most hated man on Merseyside after deliriously celebrating United's last-minute win at Old Trafford in 2006 in front of the travelling fans, while Carragher became particularly unpopular after somehow getting away with a studs-up challenge on Nani in 2011. So considering their mutual hatred as players, it was rather surprising to see them become a team on Sky Sports. Now, arguably the two most respected pundits on English television, Neville and Carragher are good friends, although they do still love to get one up on each other. Most recently, the former Liverpool vice-captain labelled his colleague a fraud for claiming he won 2 Champions Leagues when he hardly played in 2008. Nothing like a good bit of banter. 4. Mido and Hassan Shehata. Egyptian striker Mido never played at a club for more than 2 seasons during his relatively short journeyman's career, and had retired from international football by the time he was 25. So clearly he was a difficult character to work with, and no more so was this the case than at the 2006 African Cup of Nations, where he had a major spat with coach Hassan Shehata on the touchline after being subbed off during Egypt's semi-final against Cameroon. Mido was immediately banned from international duty for 6 months, meaning he missed out on the club's victory in the final, and to rub it in even more, it took place in his home city of Cairo. But in 2015, the forward put to bed any suspicions of continued tensions between him and the man known simply as the boss. Shehata is like my father, Mido said. We should put our conflicts aside if they ever existed in the first place. 3. Keane and McCarthy. Appearing on this list for the second time, but is it really any surprise? He may have fallen out with pretty much everyone he worked with, but Keane's spat with McCarthy in 2002 was undoubtedly his most infamous. The two fell out after comments made by the midfield general to the media about the Republic of Ireland's choice of training facilities at the 2002 World Cup, which he likened to a car park. And after walking out on McCarthy and his teammates, Keane severed ties with his national side for 2 years. Most figured they would never speak again, but while he was managing Wolves, McCarthy contacted Keane, who was Sunderland coach by this point. And although he was just approaching him about one of his players, the pair ended up meeting for a drink and burying the hatchet. Keane apologised for his actions at the World Cup and later said it was important for them to clear the air. However, he still maintains he's not sure what he had to apologise for. 2. Pele and Maradona. Like Ronaldo and Messi these days, Pele and Maradona once enjoyed a rivalry over who was the world's greatest ever player. Let's face it, it's irrelevant now. But following the release of the Argentinian's autobiography in 2000, things got very heated between these two legends. In the book, Maradona rated the Brazilian as the greatest footballer of all time, but also accused him of letting his former teammate Garrincha die in misery and of having a gay affair with one of his youth coaches at Santos. These ludicrous claims kicked off years of animosity, but in 2016, it appeared to have ended. On the eve of the European Championships, the pair came together for a 5-a-side charity match in Paris, managing the two sides of All-Stars. The game ended 8-all, and they even embraced afterwards. How lovely. 1. Frank Rijkaard and Rudi Voller. Germany and the Netherlands have never enjoyed particularly healthy relations on the football pitch, and they became even nastier at the 1990 World Cup, where their second-round clash was muddied by the actions of Frank Rijkaard and Rudi Voller. The Dutch defender and German attacker became embroiled in an on-pitch spat following a cynical challenge from Rijkaard, and within 2 minutes had received 2 yellows each and were given their marching orders. And as they left the pitch, Rijkaard, who was normally a composed figure on the field but was definitely the main aggressor here, spat at Voller before running off. Germany eventually won the tie on the way to yet another World Cup triumph, and Rijkaard was labelled worldwide as the llama for his saliva-based antics. He later apologised for his bad behaviour and reconciled with Voller by appearing in a butter commercial with the slogan, "Everything in butter again," a German proverb meaning everything is okay again. How fitting.
So we hope you enjoyed that, and if you want to check out more of our videos, then click here on screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get on our Snapchat and our Twitter.